Hey guys, welcome to the Animation Movies Recapped. This is David with you. Today I am going to recap a 2011 American computer animated western comedy film called Rango. I love the movie very much and hope you will like too. So without any further ado, let's start with the recap. The movie begins by showing a pet chameleon in a small aquarium named Rango. Rango is the only one who lives in the aquarium. To get rid of his loneliness, he most of the time plays with the toys that are kept in the aquarium. One day, his owner was traveling to somewhere and Rango was in the back of the car. Suddenly, their car loses control and luckily survived a terrible accident. But in the process, the aquarium in the back falls into the street and it breaks. Rango's owner, completely unaware of this, continues to drive away to his destination. Now, Rango must find a way to survive in this scorching hot desert. Soon after, he discovers an elderly pangolin, helpless to his doom, seeking help from him since he was run over by a car. He informs that he is on his way to meet the Western Spirit. Rango asks him what he meant by the Western Spirit, to which he only replies, "It is the enlightened ruler of the West." Rango then helps the pangolin to stand on his feet. The pangolin asks about his next destination. Rango, who has no idea about where to go, says that he just wants to find water because he is extremely thirsty. The pangolin then tells him to go find the city called Dirt, where he can find water. Rango eventually sets out to find the town, which is approximately a day's drive to the west. In the meantime, night appears, and Rango, though reluctant, sleeps in a sewer as he still had not found the city. In the morning, when he was still sleeping, he was shocked when his body was swept away by the water that came out of the sewers. Rango, who was extremely thirsty, immediately runs to the puddle to drink it, but the water immediately seeps into the ground and disappears. Suddenly, a female lizard named Beans with a weapon appears in front of him and points her weapon at him. Beans, who was unknown that the water actually came out of the sewer, questions Rango about who he really is and why he is throwing water in the desert when the water situation is currently difficult. Rango, who liked to fantasize ridiculously, then replies with his delusions. His strange behavior makes Beans realize that Rango doesn't actually belong here. However, she forms pity on him and takes Rango to the place where she lives. When they reach the city, it turns out that Beans in fact lives in the city that Rango is looking for. Rango then tries to blend in with the crowd by following every movement of the residents in the city, but he is not very good at it. When he enters the local pub, everyone shuts up and looks at the visitor with interest. Nervously, he steps forward and orders a glass of water. Everyone in the pub bursts into laughter hearing it, because only a man who is crazy would come looking for water inside a pub in this desert. However, the bar owner then approaches him and says that they only have cactus juice. From behind, one of the bar patrons approaches him and asks who he is. Rango realizes that if he reveals his true identity, he will become the laughingstock of everyone, so he makes up a story about his heroic deeds that he comes from the West, and their habit is to eat fellow creatures. Everyone in the pub is utterly shocked hearing his bravery. Rango then notices the name on the cactus bottle in his hand, and without knowing what the writing means, adopts the name and says to everyone that his name is Rango. However, it then turns out that the name that he just adopted, in reality, was the name of a legend who had killed the Jenkins brothers who were the predators in the city. They then ask curiously how he did it. Rango once again makes up a story and says that he killed them all with a single bullet. It makes them even more astonished. Suddenly, a group of criminals enters the bar, which makes all of them terrified. The leader of the gang approaches Rango. One of the bar patrons says he is Rango, the Jenkins brothers' murderer. From inside, Rango is trembling in fear but tries his utmost not to show it to the goons, which led him to act like crazy. The leader of the goons gets very angry and then invites him for combat. Just as they were getting ready, suddenly something flies past their heads. All the residents run desperately and hide, including the leader of the criminals. Turns out that it is a predatory hawk who often haunts the townspeople. However, Rango, who is unknown of the presence of the hawk, assumes that they are actually afraid of him, that's why they ran away. He again acts like crazy to show his heroism to them. And before he knew about the hawk fact, it was already right behind him. The hawk chases Rango and he runs desperately and hides several times but fails to get rid of him. However, at one point, Rango, by luck, kills the predator by crushing it under an empty water tower that he accidentally caused to collapse, and he just used a single bullet in the process. The citizens are very happy because Rango has defeated the hawk who had been their enemy for a long time. However, the talk of a savior reaches the mayor and Rango is invited to a reception. Later, he is appointed sheriff of the city by the mayor. On the other side, Beans met her uncle, Mr. Merrimack, who is the treasurer of the bank. But the strange thing is, this is a bank that has no money in it. Rather, this bank supplies water to their townspeople. The true reason for Bean's visit to the bank was to borrow water. Mr. Merrimack, on the other hand, appears to be in trouble and claims that the bank has stopped lending water. He then shows her the bank's water supply. It turns out that the water supply in their city is only left for the next 5 days. Beans is startled and begins to babble, but Mr. Merrimack calms her down and suggests that they can seek help from the mayor. He is the only one who can resolve the situation. However, it is Wednesday today, and every Wednesday at 12 noon, all residents perform the ritual of taking water. The ritual was very strange, where they line up and dance in unison with the containers in their hands. Rango also joins the line to fetch water. On the way, one of the residents, the old Indian crow, reminds him that he undoubtedly killed the predatory hawk, but now it is the turn of a rattlesnake named Jack, who would come to prey on them. All this time he did not come because he was afraid of the hawk, but now that the hunter is dead he will surely come. Rango in reply says that he is not afraid of the snake. Long story short, they finally reach the tap to get water. Considering his role in killing the predatory eagle, the mayor calls Rango to be the first to take water. However, to everyone's dismay, only mud comes out of the faucet when the water tap is opened. All the residents of the town are terrified and claim that Rango must have brought a curse causing mud to come out instead of water. Some of the residents request Rango be expelled from their town. In the midst of the commotion, Beans comes forward and says that the water supply in the bank is also running low, which makes the atmosphere even rowdier. All the residents then go to the bank to see the water supply. Suddenly, from behind, a gunshot makes everyone terrified. It was Rango who fired the gun. He approaches the safe where the water is stored. He again acts ridiculously and drinks 3 glasses of water while explaining to them the situation from the almost dried up reservoir. However, in the end, he is able to defuse the situation and promises that the people would not run out of water. In the evening, Rango, as the new sheriff, patrols the city. On his patrol, he finds Balthazar and his 2 prairie dog sons emerging from the ground. Balthazar is blind so he can't see. They were actually robbers operating underground. Their goal is to rob the water supply bank. But this time they got the wrong target and ended up in front of people's houses. Rango, who doesn't know what their true purpose is, instead thinks that they might be looking for treasure and gives them the equipment to dig. Along with this, he gives them a permission letter and even shows them the location of the bank. The next day, the residents panic when they come to know that the bank has been robbed. In the midst of the panic, Rango comes in to handle the situation and calms them down. Rango then forms a posse with his friends to find out the perpetrators behind this robbery, and sets out to find the thieves. The search party descends into the tunnel dug by the robbers and begins their adventure. Traveling a long way while they can't find a way out, Rango asks them to put out their torches, allowing them to see the sunlight coming in through a hole. They then come out through the hole. Once on the surface, they find plants deceased without water and a dead body that turns out to be Mr. Merrimack. One of them, who is a doctor, then examines the body. To their surprise, they discover that he died not from being shot but by drowning. Beside his body, there were footprints of wet shoes. The old Indian crow picks up the scent of the escapees. He says that there are 3 people just heading to the west. The rest of the team put their faith in him and they start for a chase again. On their way, night falls. They then decide to rest. The next day, they finally find the 3 men in question. From the top of the cliff, they watch the 3 men, who turned out to be Balthazar and his 2 sons, whom Rango had given permission that night when they were about to rob the bank. From distance, they see a gallon wrapped in cloth and immediately understand that this is the gallon loaded with water that they are stealing away. They in disguise approach the robbers and try to retrieve the gallon. To fulfill their purpose, they start staging a play in front of them. While the robbers are all busy enjoying the play, they pull out their weapons and start to run away, looting the gallon, scaring them all. However, in no time, Balthazar orders them and the clan starts chasing them, riding on the backs of bats. They had heavy weapons with which they were firing at them. However, during the chase, while speeding through the rocky road, the carriage carrying the gallon overturned. The gallon tumbles down and rolls over. Just when the gallon covering gets removed, they all are shocked to find that the gallon was empty all these times. Balthazar is flabbergasted when he hears that. One of the robbers, Lasso Rodent, then tells what actually happened that night. He says that it's true they tunneled into that vault, but there wasn't anything in it. Somebody robbed that bank before they robbed it. Rango then asks how he got the jug then. In reply, Lasso says he found it in the desert. He tried to inform Balthazar many times, but he ignored him all the time. Balthazar gets very angry and beats him up for bringing the empty jug instead of the one loaded with water. However, Balthazar and his 2 men are then brought into town to explain what had happened to the mayor. Long story short, they finally return to the city, but without any water and only with the 3 robbers. With shabby faces, they traverse the city while being watched by citizens who seem hopeless. Rango then goes to meet the mayor, who is seen playing golf accompanied by some of his men. Rango sees a pair of shoes with still wet mud near the mayor. Without asking much about the shoes, he then informs him what really happened and starts interrogating the mayor. The mayor then shows him the new town he is building. He says that he can be a part of that civilized town if he wishes, or he will be left behind. Rango then interrogates why Mr. Merrimack was left behind. The mayor gets furious when he realizes that his secret is about to be revealed. He then scares Rango by saying that he might be forgetting that he is just one little lizard. Rango is not at all intimidated by her threat and instead threatens him back, saying that soon he will reveal his true color to everyone. As soon as Rango leaves, the mayor asks his men to call the rattlesnake, Jack, so that Rango can be thrown out of the town. That afternoon, Rango, Beans, and the old Indian Crow are seen in a discussion. They are talking about the new project which is being built by the mayor. It turns out that the project is going to be built on the land owned by Beans that was handed over by her father. Beans seems perplexed, thinking, why did the mayor choose her land when there is no water? She can't figure out the source of water from where he is going to get water to build the city. Suddenly, they are all startled by a loud noise outside. Stepping outside, they discover that all the residents are protesting in demand of the robbers be hanged immediately for what they did. Rango, delivering a long speech about kindness and forgiveness, takes the situation under control. However, not long after, they all are interrupted by the furious rattlesnake Jake, invited by the mayor. Jake approaches Rango. Rango started cowering in fear seeing him. However, Jake then tells the truth to all the residents and forces Rango to admit that what he has been telling till now was all lie. Rango finally confesses. Jake then kicked him out of the city and claims that the city now belongs to him. Sad, Rango walks out of the city while all the residents witness him leaving with pitiful eyes. He travels a long way through the desert until he finally arrives at the place where it all began. He was terribly exhausted and gives up hope as he now has no motivation to live. He falls to the ground, but he is saved by a pack of animals that somewhat look like woodlice. The next day, he wakes up and finds a car behind him. He notices a man standing at some distance. He also realizes that he is the Western spirit mentioned by the old pangolin whom he helped at the beginning of the story. The Western spirit notices the desperate Rango. He then gives him motivation by saying that Rango hasn't come here by chance, rather, fate has brought him here so that he can free some helpless people from their misery. From behind, the old pangolin he had helped earlier calls out to him. The pangolin then takes him to a place where he sees a shipwreck that was buried in the ground. Pangolin informs him that once upon a time this place was a water valley. With time, all the water has dried up, and now it is nothing but a droughted, dusty desert. Suddenly, Rango sees a bunch of cacti moving. He realizes that those are cacti that could walk in search of water sources. They follow them until they finally arrive at the top of a hill. Seeing a magnificent city at the foot of the hill, they somewhat understand the game played by the mayor. He finally realizes that all this time the mayor was the one who controlled the water. He is the one who killed Mr. Merrimack for telling Beans about the state of the water in the bank. After knowing all the real facts, he decides to return to the city. But before this, he meets with Balthazar's herd and invites them to go with him to free Balthazar and his prairie dog sons who are about to be hanged. Meanwhile, at the water storage bank, the mayor is seen convincing Beans to sign a contract to hand over her land. But Beans refuses and even throws a glass of water at his face. Being angry, the mayor hands Beans to the rattlesnake. The rattlesnake, Jack, wraps around Beans and threatens to finish her off if she doesn't sign the contract. Meanwhile, Rango shouts his name from outside. He, wrapping Beans with his body, comes out to face Rango. Upon learning that Rango has come back to kill him, he releases Beans and prepares for a duel. Rango pulls out his gun, but there were no bullets in the gun. He only had one bullet, which he removed on purpose so that when Jake will run out of ammunition, he can use it to kill him. The two of them walk forward, but actually, Rango's goal is to get Jack over a tunnel dug by Balthazar and his two sons that is now covered with wood. When he notices that Jack is almost at the top of the tunnel, he stops. But unfortunately, Jack stops too. It seems like Rango's calculations have gone slightly off because Jack is still behind the hole. Just then, the clock shows exactly 12 o'clock. And according to the plan, from the outskirts of the city, built by the mayor, the old pangolin orders the walking cacti to open the waterways. The water begins to flow. However, since Jack was not yet directly above the tunnel opening, the old Indian Crow climbs up to the attic and points his gun at him. Soon, he gets noticed and Jake shoots at him, but the bullets hit on his wing, which cause slight harm to him. However, it was done deliberately so that Jack responds, and sure enough, Jake's reflex motion makes his body move forward right above the tunnel. The water just throws his body into the air, but he falls back to the ground safely. Now, he is about to kill Rango. Just then, Rango says that he has not come alone but brought a friend as well. Suddenly, a shadow somewhat like an eagle flies over their heads. Of course, he gets terribly scared because he thought that it was a hunting hawk and hides immediately. But after seeing something strange, Jake realizes that it was not an eagle but a swarm of bats. It turns out that Balthazar's men have come riding on numerous bats to free them. In a fit of rage, Jack comes out and spends all his bullets to kill them. However, this time, Rango approaches in front of him. Just as he is about to kill his archenemy with the last bullet he has, the mayor stops him from behind. They have Beans in their custody. Rango is reluctant to hand his gun to the mayor, but before handing it to the mayor, again removes the bullet and hides it in his mouth, unbeknownst to the mayor. Rango and Beans are then put into a gallon. When Beans realizes that they are about to die drowning, she kisses Rango, as she really fell in love with him. But unfortunately, she swallows the bullet that was hidden in his mouth. Meanwhile, the mayor, who feels that Rango has been dealt with, is now about to kill Jake because he is no longer needed. Jake is furious to hear that, but he can't do much because he has run out of ammunition. On the other side, Rango desperately tries to get the bullet out of Beans' throat that she just swallowed. With Rango's gun, the mayor points it at Jake. But when he pulls the trigger, it turns out that the gun was not loaded. Just then, Rango succeeded in getting the bullet out of Beans' mouth. The bullet goes straight to the glass and its tip hits the glass slightly, which shatters the glass, and they all are flooded outside. The helpless mayor persuades Rango to cooperate, but Rango refuses and hands the mayor over to Jake. Jake drags him away to fulfill his revenge on him. The scene shifts. Now, life in the city has changed. The residents now have become more civilized and are living peacefully. In the end, Beans is seen married to the greatest and most ridiculous sheriff of all time. This is where the movie ends. See you soon with the recap of a new movie. Till then, stay happy and chill out.